Thank you for attending the public involvement meeting for the US 53 and US 14/61 corridor study. This is the first of two public involvement meetings that will be held for this study. The purpose of this meeting is to provide details about the study, present the study purpose and need, present the preliminary alternatives under consideration, and gain feedback from the public. After you watch this presentation, we encourage you to view the exhibits prepared for this meeting and fill out your comment sheet with any comments that you'd like to share. Wisconsin DOT representatives will be available to answer any questions you may have. This study is part of the larger WisDOT La Crosse Major Study, which is evaluating major north-south routes in the La Crosse area as shown on the map. Each corridor will be evaluated with separate studies, including US 53 and US 14/61 shown in blue on the map, WIS 35 shown in yellow, WIS 16 and WIS 157 shown in purple, and WIS 16 downtown shown in green. The focus of today's meeting is on the US 53 and US 14/61 corridor. If you are interested in being involved in the planning efforts for other corridors, public involvement opportunities will be coming later in 2024 and 2025. The limits of the US 53 and US 14/61 corridor are from WIS 35 or West Avenue in the south to I-90 in the north, a length of approximately 4.3 miles. The scope of this study is to identify alternatives that improve safety, traffic operations, and multimodal facilities while also addressing pavement, bridge, and utility infrastructure needs. A key component of a WisDOT corridor study is a purpose and need statement that identifies the objectives of the improvement project. The statement is not finalized until the completion of the study and can change as feedback is received or new information becomes available. For this study, the draft statement is: the purpose of the US 53 and US 14/61 study is to develop alternatives that improve safety, address traffic operations concerns where practicable, and address existing and projected infrastructure needs through the design year of 2050. Next, we'll review the identified needs for the study. Improving safety is a primary purpose of the study. Safety screening is used to identify roadway segments and intersections where crash frequency is significantly higher than expected given the characteristics of the location. These identified locations are called safety sites of promise, or locations where safety concerns have been identified. Over the last several 5-year screening periods, more than 50% of the corridor and at least 18 intersections were flagged as a safety site of promise. A review of the crash history since 2015 indicates that there have been fluctuations in the annual number of crashes. Most notably, there was a dip in crash frequency in 2020, likely due to changes in travel patterns caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite these fluctuations, the proportion of crashes happening at intersections has not significantly changed, with a little more than half of all crashes occurring at intersections. When we look closer at the types of crashes occurring at intersections, we see the proportions also remain relatively steady, though we've seen a slight increase in angle and left turn crashes and a slight decrease in rear end and sideswipe crashes. The US 53 and US 14/61 corridor passes through several areas of the city with high bicycle and pedestrian demand. The number and location of crashes that involved a bicyclist or pedestrian are in the exhibit to the right. These exhibits include the number of crashes that included a bicyclist or pedestrian, as well as the number of crashes that were influenced by a bicyclist or pedestrian. Vehicle crashes influenced by a bicycle or pedestrian are crashes where a bicyclist or pedestrian was not struck, but their presence was a factor in the crash, such as when a vehicle is rear-ended while stopped for a crossing pedestrian. This exhibit also shows the level of traffic stress for intersection crossings. Level of traffic stress is a quantitative measure indicating risk and comfort level of a crossing for a bicyclist or pedestrian based on traffic volumes, vehicle speeds, number of lanes, and the configuration of the crossing. While bicycle and pedestrian crashes occurred throughout the corridor, the largest concentration was in the downtown area. We encourage you to review the purpose and needs safety exhibits for more detailed information on crash history and crash trends along the corridor. Infrastructure needs for the US 53 and US 14/61 corridor were also evaluated, including pavement and bridge needs. Pavement replacement schedules indicate approximately 60% of the corridor will need pavement replacement or reconstruction prior to the 2050 design year. In addition, 3 bridges are located within the corridor limits, one that crosses the La Crosse River and 2 that cross the railroad between Gould and St. Andrew Streets. All 3 roadway bridges will need minor repairs, including a concrete deck overlay prior to 2050. The pedestrian bridge located near Gunderson Hospital is a private facility and no rehabilitation work is anticipated. Finally, public utilities will be evaluated for replacement whenever pavement replacement or reconstruction is planned. A traffic operations analysis completed for the study found delays and backups at a few locations. The US 53 and La Crosse Street intersection currently experiences delays and backups, and these deficiencies are expected to worsen in future years. The southbound US 14/61 or 3rd Street and Cameron Avenue intersection is expected to have delays and backups in future years for the eastbound right turn movement. The Market Street intersections with northbound US 14/61 or 4th Street and southbound US 14/61 or 3rd Street are both expected to experience deficient delays in future years. These traffic operations concerns will be addressed where practicable. Multimodal facilities were also evaluated to assess non-vehicular modes of travel along the US 53 and US 14/61 corridor. As mentioned previously, pedestrian crossings were evaluated using the level of traffic stress measure. Existing bicycle facilities were evaluated for connectivity along and adjacent to the corridor. Lastly, transit stops along or adjacent to the corridor were evaluated for the presence of amenities such as an accessible landing at a transit stop. We encourage you to review the more detailed information on the multimodal facilities exhibits. Now we would like to share some of the preliminary alternatives we've developed to address these needs. Please keep in mind these are still preliminary concepts, and we would appreciate your input as we refine them. WSDOT has developed several exhibits that show potential changes to the roadway typical section. A typical section is a street configuration that remains consistent for a specific roadway segment. A typical section is focused on the width of the roadway elements, including travel lanes, turn lanes, parking lanes, bicycle facilities, medians, terraces, and sidewalks. There are several unique existing typical sections within the study limits, including 2 areas with one-way pairs. A one-way pair is a facility where 2 separate one-way streets combine to carry the traffic for an arterial route. Capacity expansion or adding travel lanes is not planned as part of the US 53 and US 14/61 corridor study. One of the main differentiators for study alternatives is the type of bicycle facility. Examples of different bicycle facilities are displayed here. Buffered bike lanes are on-street facilities with a painted buffer between the bicycle lane and parking lane or travel lane. Sidewalk level cycle tracks are 2-way bike facilities that are at the same level as the sidewalk. Separated bike lanes are on-street facilities with a physical barrier, typically bollards or a raised median, providing separation between the bike lane and travel lane. Sidewalk level bike lanes are adjacent to the travel lane but at the same level as the sidewalk. Parking protected bike lanes are adjacent to the parking lane and at the same level as the sidewalk. Separated cycle tracks are on-street two-way bike facilities with a physical barrier providing separation between the cycle track and the travel lane. The example typical section concept shown here is between Jackson Street and Division Street. This concept would remove one travel lane on northbound US 14/61 or 4th Street and remove one parking lane on southbound US 14/61 or 3rd Street. The roadway width from these removed lanes is reallocated for separated bike lanes. This is just one of many typical section alternatives we are considering. We invite you to review the exhibits for typical section alternatives along the entire corridor and provide your feedback and ideas. In addition to typical section concepts, WSDOT is also identifying spot improvements to be considered along the corridor. This slide shows information on potential improvements at signalized intersections on one-way streets. Weaving movements near these intersections have resulted in a trend of sideswipe crashes. We are considering improved signing and pavement markings, improved signal visibility, and improved wayfinding to mitigate these concerns. Like the typical sections, these are only a couple of the spot improvement options being considered. Please take some time to review the spot improvement exhibits for more details and provide your comments. Thank you for your interest in the US 53 and US 14/61 corridor study. To close out this presentation, we would like to present the schedule and next steps. With the completion of the first round of public involvement, WSDOT's next step will be to refine the list of preliminary alternatives and evaluate them. This will include developing detailed alternative exhibits that will allow us to identify impacts. Following a meeting with local officials and technical staff to present these detailed alternatives, a recommended alternative will be selected. WSDOT will host a second round of public involvement meetings in the spring of 2025 to present detailed alternatives and the recommended alternative. The study is anticipated to wrap up in late 2025 with the completion of an environmental document. The early 2030s is the earliest anticipated construction timeframe. Construction for the corridor is not yet scheduled and is pending approval for construction funds. Thank you again for taking time to view this presentation. We encourage you to fill out your comment forms and return them to WSDOT. Comment forms can be left with us today, mailed at a later date, or emailed to the WSDOT staff listed in the study handout.